You may remember Anthony Joshua when he lost to Daniel Dubois. I think it was literally, it could have been days after. He made a video, uploaded to a few of his social media channels, just basically saying, yeah, he was going to go into the immediate rematch. Now, Eddie Hearn, in the days after the loss to Daniel Dubois, he was mentioning obviously the rematch, yes, but he was also mentioning the possibility of AJ just kind of basically advising him to kind of wait it out and see what happens with Fury Usyk, and irrespective of what the result is, to be looking at doing the Tyson Fury fight. And Turki Al Sheikh is kind of, I don't, he's not necessarily said the same, but you could tell with Turki Al Sheikh that's the fight he wants, is Joshua versus Fury. Now, according to BBC Sport, which I have here on screen, Eddie Hearn has indicated that Joshua might not be ready in time to take the Daniel Dubois rematch in February and could instead now target Tyson Fury in May. AJ wants revenge, but the only issue is timing. For the rematch to happen in February, training camp will have to start in a couple of weeks. There are always niggles, and he had a few, so physically it's just a case of whether AJ is ready to do that. It would be frustrating if we made the Dubois rematch and Fury won versus Alexander Usyk. Then we're sitting there going, hang on a minute, we're fighting Dubois, but we could have fought Fury in May for the biggest fight in boxing. Well, I agree with some of the things Eddie Hearn said there in terms of February being a quick turnaround. Yeah, it's a very quick turnaround. Considering the fact you might say, well, it was only a 5-rounder. Well, it only went 5 rounds. Yeah, he took a hellacious beating in those 5 rounds. So to go straight into an immediate rematch after such a short amount of time, that's not going to be ideal. Joshua, I don't want to say he was necessarily concussed, I don't know, but the neurological damage, he's talking about niggles. I'm talking about neurologically, mentally, because it's obviously a traumatic thing to go through, a big knockout like that. Not like Ruiz where he was beaten up and dropped a couple. This was a big counted out knockout, the memes, everything. So I get what he's saying there about February being too soon. I get that, but I don't like what he says here when he says, hang on, we're fighting Dubois, but we could have fought Fury in May. For a variety of reasons, I don't like what he's saying there, because they're doing it seems to me as though this fight is just will never happen, because every single time both guys have a respective fight, they're just always talking about what's happening next, about Joshua, about Fury. When Fury beats Usyk, are we going to get Joshua? Joshua didn't even have a fight lined up. When Joshua beats Dubois, are we going to get, you're like, neither fight has happened yet. Can we wait and just see what happens in the moment? At the end of the day, Fury did lose to Alexander Usyk last time around. And what they're saying here is basically for Joshua to wait and see what happens, and then to fight Fury in May if he wins. Now, I would imagine that they would look to do that fight irrespective of the result of Fury Usyk. Hypothetically speaking, let's just say Alexander Usyk beats Tyson Fury this time. Say it's another competitive decision, but he loses. They'd probably still look to do that fight. It just depends on how quick Tyson Fury could go back. But if Fury was to beat Usyk, and just say fairly, let's say, I think he can beat Usyk fairly, certainly. Let's say Fury beats Alexander Usyk. For me, I think that would be an absolute disgrace to do the Joshua fight immediately after, because why should Joshua get an immediate crack at Tyson Fury? Why should Joshua even get an immediate rematch with Daniel Dubois when he's coming off a loss, and a devastating loss at that? You know, we're moving into something in boxing where we're getting these big fights a lot more, and we're getting these big cards. It's good for that. We're getting the big fights made, we're getting big undercards, we're getting these big shows over in Saudi Arabia. That's all very well and good, and we're not just getting them in Saudi Arabia, we're getting some in the UK, we're getting some in the US, etc. That's all well and good. So in terms of boxing and in terms of its popularity is on the rise, which is good. We all want that. We all want the sport to grow. We all want the big fights. We all want to be able to say, well, boxing is not the sport where the big fights don't happen. They happen. We have the global stars. They're fighting regularly and all that. That's all good. We're all happy with that. But it seems now we're moving into a time where rematches just chucked around. Like every single fight, regardless of what the implications are, certainly at title level, has a rematch clause. And rematches have always been there. They absolutely have. But they've been primarily there in voluntary defences and on the champion's side. The champion has the ability to invoke a rematch clause if he give someone a voluntary shot. Like if Daniel Dubois giving Joshua a voluntary, I would expect him to have a rematch clause in there. So I wouldn't necessarily be complaining if it was Daniel Dubois, because that's the champion's right. You know, you give someone a voluntary, it's almost custom. It does occasionally happen where they don't, but more often than not, they always give a rematch. That's A-okay, I have no issue with that. But now we're seeing mandatories get hit with rematch clause. Now we're seeing Joshua, I know it's not a rematch clause per se, but the way Eddie Hearn was talking in the immediate aftermath, it sounded like Joshua had an immediate rematch clause in his contract, and you're just like, well, you lost in a one-sided fashion. And as well as that, you were the challenger, really? And as well as that, now we're seeing guys challenge for world titles coming off the back of a loss. I don't like that. I've always said it, I don't like seeing a fighter coming off the back of a loss, and in Joshua's case, particularly devastating loss, be able to just wait, bypass, and then just decide, okay, well, Fury's won, right, let's do the fight. I know it's a big money fight. At the end of the day, money talks and BS walks. That's just, it's the way it is. But I don't like it. I really don't like it. And what would they do if Alexander Usyk wins? Are they really going to try and do they're going to try and do Joshua versus Usyk 3? I mean, the demand wouldn't be there for that fight at all. I mean, it wasn't there, for me, it wasn't there before the Dubois fight. But a lot of people, given the fact that Joshua looked devastating against Ngannou, were like, no, let's do it now. Ben Davison, with him training him, he'll beat Alexander Usyk. Yeah, well, will you train Joshua for the Dubois fight? How'd that work for you? In terms of Joshua, listen, I would say best two weight, yes. But fights like Dillian Whyte, Deontay Wilder, if Fury loses, certainly, they're the fights to be made now. Going straight back in with Daniel Dubois is not a good idea, and I get what Eddie Hearn is saying there, and he's absolutely spot on about. And February is way too quick to recover from that. But to be waiting for Fury and to see if he wins, listen, this is just like Groundhog Day again. This has been going on and on and on and on and on. They are trying to do Joshua Fury, and the longer they leave it, the less. It's still going to be a big fight financially, but it's never going to be what it was. You're never going to get it to like 2021 when Joshua was unified champion. He wasn't unbeaten, but Fury was. He was WBC champion. You're never going to get it quite to that. You're never going to get it quite to what it would have been if Fury had beaten Alexander Usyk in May, and Joshua, off the back of those performances against Oliver Lean and Francis Ngannou, if they'd have fought then this year. You're never going to get it to that. But they still just want it for whatever reason. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Likelihood is we won't get Joshua Dubois next. They're going to hold out and see what happens in Fury Usyk. Again, like, if you're targeting the loser, okay, but to target the winner coming off the back of a loss, yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's going to almost be epidemic in boxing moving. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's not going to be an epidemic in boxing moving forward, but I worry it might. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Peace.